Valerie lived alone at the edge of the colony on Zeril 3. Her small house stood quiet, surrounded by frozen trees and deep snow. The nights were always cold, and the wind never stopped howling. People in the colony stayed far away from her. They said strange things behind her back. Some believed she was cursed, others said she brought bad luck. No one really knew her, and no one tried to. She never had visitors. She never shared her food, her fire, or her bed with anyone. Her bed was hers alone. It had always been that way. She liked the silence. Or maybe she had just gotten used to it. That night the storm was worse than usual. Thick snow fell from the sky and strong winds made the windows shake. Valerie sat near her small heater, holding a hot cup of broth in her hands. The only light in the room came from the flickering fire. Her eyes were half closed when a sudden knock made her freeze. She turned her head, shocked. No one ever knocked. The sound came again, louder this time. Cautiously, she walked to the door. Her hand touched the lock, but she hesitated. She opened it slightly and saw a man standing in the snow. He was tall, human, and looked half frozen. His clothes were torn. His hands were shaking. His face was pale and wet with melting snow. He looked like he had come from a crash. "Please," the man said. His voice was weak. "I just need shelter. Just one night." Valerie didn't answer at first. She studied him with calm eyes. Then, slowly, she opened the door wider and stepped aside. The man stepped in, breathing heavily. His boots left wet prints on the floor. He dropped his bag and fell to his knees near the fire. She closed the door and locked it behind him. She watched him from a distance. He didn't look like someone dangerous. He looked tired and broken. After a moment, she walked to the kitchen and poured him a cup of hot broth. She placed it near him without a word. He took it with shaking hands. "Thank you," he said. "My name is Jacob." Valerie said nothing. He sipped the drink slowly. The warmth returned to his face. After a few minutes, he looked around. "You live here alone?" he asked. She nodded. "Must be hard." She didn't reply. Jacob leaned against the wall and pulled the blanket closer. "I crashed not far from here. I didn't think I'd make it. Then I saw your light." Still, she remained quiet. Later, she gave him a pillow and another blanket. She pointed to a spot near the fire. "You can sleep there," she said softly. He nodded. "Thank you. I won't be any trouble." She turned away and went to her room. The door stayed half open. She lay in bed but couldn't sleep. Her mind was full. It wasn't fear that kept her awake. It was the feeling that something had changed. Someone was inside her home. A man. A human. Someone warm and breathing just a few steps away. She thought of the past. She thought of the day the colony turned on her. They said her bloodline was dangerous after her parents disappeared during an experiment. People blamed her for things she didn't do. They spread lies. From that day, no one came near. No one offered kindness. No one cared. But tonight, a stranger had stood at her door, and she had opened it. She sat up and walked quietly to the door of her room. She looked out. Jacob was sleeping. His chest rose and fell slowly. He looked calm now. Peaceful. Like he was safe. Valerie watched him for a long time. Then she whispered, "No one has ever shared my bed. No one has even stepped into my home. Why did I let you in?" She didn't know the answer. Maybe it was the way he looked at her. Not like the others. Not with fear. Not with hate. Just tired hope. She went back to her bed and closed her eyes. The fire kept burning. The wind outside screamed louder. But inside, her home felt less empty. For the first time in years, the silence didn't hurt. Something had changed, and deep inside her heart, a warm feeling began to grow. You shouldn't be here. The storm still howled through the night, but inside the small stone house, the silence between them grew heavier. Morning had not come, yet, and the fire was burning low. Valerie stood quietly in the shadows watching the human sleep. She had barely closed her eyes. She kept telling herself this was a mistake, letting him in, letting anyone in. She moved slowly to the kitchen, making sure not to wake him. Her steps were soft, almost soundless. She poured some warm broth into a cup and placed it on the table. Then she walked back and sat near the window, her gaze locked on the falling snow. Her thoughts ran wild. He was just a human, just another traveler. He would leave soon, and she would be alone again. That was how it had always been. That was how it should stay. Jacob stirred. His eyes opened slowly, confused at first. He sat up, rubbing his hands together for warmth. Then he saw her sitting quietly, staring outside. "You're awake," he said with a tired smile. Valerie nodded, not looking at him. "Thank you, again, for not leaving me outside. You shouldn't be here," she said finally. Her voice was calm but firm. Jacob looked surprised. I didn't mean to cause trouble." "You didn't," she said. "But you shouldn't have come. This place, it's not safe for people like you." Jacob stood slowly and picked up the cup she had placed for him. He took a sip and sat down again. "People like me? What do you mean?" She turned to face him. Her eyes were clear, but sad. "Humans don't stay here. Even the locals stay away from me. This place has a name, a story, one that scares people." Jacob raised an eyebrow. "Let me guess, they think you're cursed?" She didn't answer, but her silence was enough. "I've heard stories like that before," he said softly. "Usually told by people who don't understand something or someone." Valerie stood. "That doesn't change the way they treat me." Jacob finished the broth and placed the cup back on the table. "I don't care about stories. You saved my life. I don't care what they say." "You will," she said. Outside, the wind began to slow. The storm was passing, but the sky remained dark. Jacob looked around the small room. There wasn't much, just the basics: a bed, a small table, a heater, and shelves with dried food and books. It wasn't the home of a dangerous person. It was the home of someone forgotten. Valerie walked over to the fire and added more fuel. The flames grew again. The light flickered across her face, showing a quiet beauty hidden behind years of sadness. "You live like this every day?" Jacob asked gently. "Yes." "No one visits?" "No." "No one helps?" "No." Jacob sighed. "That's not right." "It's normal," she replied. He stood and walked closer. "You didn't have to let me in, but you did. So why do you keep pushing me away?" She turned to him. "Because kindness is dangerous. It makes you weak. It makes you hope. And hope hurts." Jacob looked at her and said nothing. The silence stretched between them again. But this time, it wasn't cold. It was thoughtful. Then she whispered, "They say I'm unfit, unworthy, that I'm broken. Do you believe them?" Valerie hesitated. Her eyes fell to the floor. "Sometimes." Jacob reached into his coat and pulled out a small, glowing device. "This is my signal beacon. If I fix it, someone might come for me in a day or two. I'll be gone." Valerie didn't reply. "But while I'm here," he continued, "I'm not afraid of you." She looked at him, searching his face for a lie. "But found none." "I should be," she said, "but you make it hard." A faint smile touched her lips. For the first time, Jacob saw her eyes soften. She picked up a second pillow from the shelf and placed it on the floor next to his blanket. "Sleep. You're still weak." He nodded. "Only if you promise not to turn me into stone while I sleep." She gave him a look, not amused. "That's Medusa's. I'm not one of those." Jacob chuckled. "Just checking." She walked back to her room, but before she stepped inside, she paused. Without turning, she said softly, "No one's ever made me talk this much before. Not in years." Jacob replied, "Maybe no one ever stayed long enough to listen." She didn't answer. But her door didn't close all the way this time. And for the first time in his life, Jacob felt like he had stepped into a story bigger than his own. Whispers of the past. Valerie stood by the window, her hand resting on the cold glass. The snow outside had stopped falling, but the sky remained gray and heavy. Inside, the fire crackled softly, and Jacob sat at the table, repairing his signal device with slow, careful hands. They hadn't spoken much since the night before, but the silence between them felt different now, softer, warmer, like something fragile growing between two people who didn't trust easily. Then Valerie broke it. "They say I was born under a dying star," she said quietly, her eyes still on the sky. "They say that's why bad things happen around me." Jacob looked up, confused at first, then listened. He didn't interrupt. "When I was 9, she continued, my parents worked in the colony's science labs. One day there was an explosion. Everyone inside was gone. No one found their bodies. I was outside, and I lived." Her voice was calm, but there was pain behind each word, buried deep and long held. "The colony elders said it was no accident. They said my presence triggered something. They didn't have proof, but they needed someone to blame." Jacob set his tools down and leaned forward. "They blamed a child?" She nodded. "They said I was cursed, that no family should take me in. I was labeled untouchable. That label stuck. No one wanted me after that. Not to raise, not to bond, not even to speak to." Jacob felt anger rising inside him, but he kept his voice steady. "And you've lived alone since then?" Valerie turned and looked at him. "What else could I do? I built this house on the edge so they would leave me alone. I don't go into the markets, I don't speak to the others, I survive." She walked toward the fire and knelt beside it, warming her hands. "Sometimes I think I forgot what it means to be touched by someone who doesn't fear me." Jacob stood slowly. "They never gave you a chance to prove who you are." Valerie looked up at him. "Maybe I'm not meant to be known." There was a long silence before Jacob said, "You didn't let me freeze, that's all I need to know." Just then a sharp sound broke the quiet, a loud rumble from above. The walls of the house shook slightly and a low whine filled the air. Valerie stood quickly. "That's not thunder." Jacob stepped outside and looked up. A ship was descending, sleek, black, and marked with red lights. It wasn't a rescue ship. He could feel it. Valerie's face went pale. "No," she whispered. "They found me." "Who?" Jacob asked. "Bounty hunters," she replied. "Private ones, paid by those who want me gone. Every few years they come. I usually hide or scare them away." Jacob frowned. "Scare them how?" Valerie's hands trembled slightly and her voice turned distant. "There's something in me. Something they don't understand. I don't understand it either. Energy, power, it's what they fear." Jacob didn't move. "Then maybe it's time to stop hiding." Valerie looked at him with wide eyes. "You'd stand with me?" "Of course." She stepped forward and placed a hand on his arm. Her fingers were cold, but her touch was careful, like someone not used to closeness. "No one ever stood with me before," she said. "Then I'll be the first," Jacob replied. Outside, the ship landed with a heavy thud. Dust and snow burst into the air. The ground shook. Valerie stepped toward the door, her eyes now glowing faintly with a strange, soft light. Jacob grabbed his old blaster, even though he knew it wouldn't be enough. "What do they want?" "They don't want to kill me," she said. "They want to take me, study me, use me." "And what do you want?" Valerie looked at him. "To finally be free." Jacob nodded. "Then let's make sure this time they leave empty-handed." The door creaked open and the cold wind rushed in. Valerie stepped outside first. Jacob followed, unsure of what was about to happen, but certain of one thing. She wasn't cursed, she was powerful. And maybe, just maybe, she was never meant to be alone. The snow crunched beneath their feet as Valerie and Jacob stepped outside. The cold bit at their skin, but the danger in the air was hotter than fire. The black ship hovered silently, steam hissing from its sides, and then, with a sharp hiss, it lowered its ramp. 3 figures walked out. They weren't from the colony. Their armor was thick, dark, and covered in strange symbols. Their faces were hidden behind glowing masks. Each one carried a weapon, not the kind used for warning shots, but the kind meant to end someone. Valeri stood still, her eyes locked on the tallest figure. "I told you," she whispered to Jacob. "They're not here to talk." One of the bounty hunters stepped forward and raised a scanner. It beeped 3 times, then flashed red. He lowered it and spoke in a cold, robotic voice. "Target confirmed. Valeri of Zarel 3. You are to be taken alive or terminated if resistance is shown. Orders remain active." Jacob stepped in front of her without thinking. "She's not going anywhere with you." The lead bounty hunter tilted his head. "Human interference is not part of the agreement. Stand down." Valerie reached out and pulled Jacob back gently. "They'll kill you," she said softly. Jacob glanced at her. "Not without a fight." Without warning, one of the hunters fired. The blast missed Jacob by inches and scorched the ground. The snow sizzled. Valerie's eyes lit up, not just with fear, but with something deeper, something wild, something waking. She raised one hand, and the next blast never landed. It stopped in the air, frozen in place like time itself had paused. The bounty hunters stiffened. Jacob's mouth fell open. "What did you just do?" Valerie's voice was low, like the growl of thunder. "I didn't choose this, but I won't run anymore." She waved her arm and the frozen blast reversed, flying back at the hunter who fired it. It knocked him back hard, sending him crashing into the side of the ship. The other 2 opened fire, but the air shimmered around her like a shield. Energy. Blast bounced off invisible walls. Then, with a sharp breath, she pushed her hands forward, and a wave of blue light burst from her body. The remaining hunters were thrown back into the snow. Jacob stared at her, heart racing. Not with fear, but with awe. Valerie dropped to one knee, breathing heavily. "I can't hold it for long. It drains me." Jacob rushed to her side and helped her up. "You saved me. You saved both of us." "I didn't want you to see this," she said, her voice weak. "Now you'll leave like the rest." He looked into her eyes. "I'm not going anywhere." Behind them, the hunters slowly began to move again. "We have to finish this," Valerie said. "No," Jacob said, pulling out a small device from his pocket. "We escape." He pressed a button, and a small shuttle signal lit up from his wrist. It blinked red for a moment, then turned green. "I didn't crash by accident," Jacob said. "I was looking for something. Someone. You." Valerie stared at him, confused. "What are you talking about?" He smiled, even as chaos swirled behind them. "I work with a group that studies rare powers like yours. We don't hunt them. We protect them." Valari's breath caught in her throat. "Why didn't you say that before?" "Because I didn't know if I could trust you, but now I do." From the sky, a smaller ship appeared, sleek, fast, and made for quick getaways. It landed nearby, with its engines humming. Valerie looked at the approaching bounty hunters, then at Jacob. "If I leave, I can never return." "Do you even want to?" he asked. She shook her head. Together, they ran for the shuttle. The bounty hunters fired again. But this time, Valari raised her hand and sent a blast of energy behind her, stopping them long enough for the shuttle doors to open. Jacob pulled her inside and the shuttle lifted off. As the colony and the bounty ship faded below, Valerie sat back and closed her eyes. Jacob watched her carefully. "Are you okay?" She opened her eyes and gave him a tired smile. "No one ever fought for me before. No one ever stood in front of me. And no one ever will again," Jacob replied, "because from now on, I'll be right here." Valerie looked at him, really looked, and for the first time in her life, she believed it. The human stays. The stars outside the shuttle windows moved like slow rivers of light. Far behind them, Zarel 3 had disappeared into the black, a cold memory left buried under snow and silence. Inside the ship, Jacob adjusted the controls while Valerie sat quietly across from him, her arms wrapped around her knees. For the first time in years, she wasn't on frozen land. She wasn't hiding. She wasn't alone. But her heart felt heavier than ever. "You're safe now," Jacob said gently, breaking the silence. Valerie didn't answer right away. Her voice came out soft, almost unsure. "I don't know what that means, safe." Jacob walked over and sat next to her. "It means no more running. No more people hunting you down. You're not a prisoner anymore." She looked at him. "You say that like it's easy." "I don't think it is," he replied. "But I think you deserve it." She studied him for a long moment. "Why do you care? You barely know me." Jacob smiled. "Because when I was lost in the snow, you let me in. No one forced you. You didn't know me either. You could have shut the door. I almost did. But you didn't." Valerie turned away, her voice tight. "You don't understand. I didn't save you because I'm kind. I saved you because I was tired of being cold. Not just my skin, my heart. I've been cold for too long." Jacob reached into his bag and pulled out a small food pack. He opened it and offered half to her. She hesitated, then took it. They ate in silence for a while. It wasn't a feast, but the shared meal felt like a quiet agreement, like something unspoken had changed between them. "You risked everything," she said suddenly. "You didn't run when I showed my powers. You didn't leave when the hunters came. You stayed." Jacob leaned back against the wall. "I've seen people with power before, but I've never seen someone use it to protect a stranger. That's what made me stay." Valerie lowered her head. "What if I can't control it forever? What if I lose control one day and hurt someone?" "Then I'll help you," Jacob said. "I won't run, I'll stand with you." A strange sound escaped her lips, a laugh. It was soft and surprised, like it had been buried deep inside and forgotten. She shook her head. "You sound like someone from a story." "Maybe we're writing one," he said. She looked at him, really looked. His hair was still messy from the crash. His jacket had small tears. His fingers were scratched, but his eyes were steady, honest. He wasn't perfect, but he was real. Later that night, the shuttle docked at a quiet station in deep orbit. The place was mostly empty, just a few friendly faces, trusted contacts of Jacob's. They offered food, blankets, and rest. Valerie didn't speak much, but she stayed close to Jacob's side. When the others left, she followed him to the small cabin assigned to them. He spread out a sleeping mat on the floor. Valerie stood at the doorway, her voice low. "You don't have to sleep down there." Jacob looked up. "You sure?" She nodded. "There's room on the bed." He smiled and started to move, but she stopped him with one quiet sentence. "No one's ever shared my bed before. Not because I didn't want to, but because no one ever stayed long enough to ask." Jacob stepped forward and looked her in the eyes. "Then let me be the first." She nodded again, and together they lay on the bed, side by side. Nothing more. No promises. No rushing. Just warmth between two people who had spent too long in the cold. And that night, with the stars spinning slowly outside the window, Valerie didn't feel cursed. She felt chosen. Warmth in the cold. The station lights dimmed into artificial night, casting the cabin in a soft golden glow. Valerie lay still, not asleep, just breathing, slow and calm. Beside her, Jacob slept peacefully, his hand resting near hers on the bed. She could feel the heat of his body, the steady rhythm of his breath. It was the first time she hadn't flinched from someone's presence in years, but peace never stayed long in her life. Her eyes opened wide when the emergency alarm echoed through the station's hallway. A low, steady buzz. Not loud, but dangerous. Her body moved before her mind could catch up. She sat up fast, her heart racing. Jacob stirred. "What's that?" "Warning," she said. "It's not from the station system. That sound, it's a long-range alert. Someone is scanning the station." Jacob was already pulling on his jacket. Someone looking for you? She didn't answer. She didn't need to. They both moved quickly. Jacob checked the control screen while Valerie scanned the outer sensor logs. A familiar ship signature blinked across the monitor. Her blood ran cold. "It's them," she whispered. "Same bounty network. They must have followed our energy trail." Jacob cursed under his breath. "They're not giving up." Valerie backed away from the screen. "We have to leave, now. They won't stop until I'm caught, or dead." But as she turned, a station worker stepped into the room. A calm woman with silver eyes and short dark hair. "You don't have to run again," she said. Jacob stood between her and Valerie. "Who are you?" The woman held up a badge. "You sent the signal, remember? I'm part of the protection group you contacted. We've been monitoring bounty traffic for months, and we've been waiting for her." Valerie stared. "You knew I existed?" The woman nodded. "And we've waited until you revealed yourself, not to harm you, but to offer you freedom. Real freedom. A safe world, new identity, training if needed. You just have to trust us." Valerie hesitated. "I've never trusted anyone except him. And look where that brought you." The woman said kindly. "He gave you a reason to hope. We're here to build on it." Jacob looked at Valerie. "Your choice. I'll follow either way." The words hit something deep inside her. Choice. That word was stolen from her so many years ago. Others made the rules. Others decided her value. Others wrote her future. But now, she had a say. Valerie looked at the woman. "I'll go, but only if he comes with me." The woman smiled. "He's already listed as your sponsor. He's not going anywhere." A few hours later, they stood on the deck of a different ship. Sleek, fast, protected. The bounty ship still hovered in the distance, but it was already too late. Valerie had slipped out of reach. As the stars moved around them, Valerie stood, alone near the window. Jacob came to her side, holding 2 mugs of warm drink. He handed one to her. She took it, her fingers brushing his. "You really stayed." "I told you I would." She looked out at the stars. "Back on Zero 3, I thought love was something others got. I thought warmth was only for people who were wanted." He touched her shoulder gently. "You're wanted now." She turned to him, eyes shining. "You gave me back something I lost. What's that?" She smiled softly. "My name, my voice, my right to feel warmth, and not apologize for it." He smiled back. "You never had to." And as the stars lit up the space beyond, she reached for his hand. Not because she needed saving, but because she finally believed she was worth being held. A new home together. The stars stretched endlessly ahead, glowing like rivers of light against the black sea of space. Valerie stood near the observation window of their new ship. No longer just Jacob's, no longer just a place to hide, but theirs. Her reflection looked back at her in the glass, but this time, she didn't see the girl once called cursed. She saw a woman who had survived, who had fought, who had been chosen, and who had finally chosen back. Behind her, soft footsteps approached. Jacob placed a hand on her shoulder. "We'll be landing soon." She turned to him. "I've never landed anywhere with someone waiting for me." He smiled. "Then let's be the ones who wait for each other." Valerie didn't know how to answer that, so instead she leaned gently into his shoulder, letting the silence between them speak for her. The new world came into view through the glass. It was nothing like Zerel 3. No snow, no darkness, no rumors whispered behind closed doors. This place was warm, green fields, golden skies, a world untouched by her past. Their ship touched down on soft earth. When the doors opened, Valerie paused at the ramp. The sun touched her face. She blinked at the light. It felt strange, but not bad. "You okay?" Jacob asked behind her. She nodded slowly. I don't know what to do. I've never been welcomed anywhere. Jacob reached out his hand. Then let's learn together. She took his hand, and they stepped onto the new world side by side. The officials there already knew who she was, but none of them flinched. None of them looked at her with fear. One of them, an older woman with soft eyes, even smiled as she handed Valari a small ID card. Valari looked at it in disbelief. Her name was printed there, clearly, boldly. No warnings, no labels, just her name. A room was prepared for them in a quiet village on the edge of a green forest. It was small but warm. There was only one bed. Jacob offered to sleep on the couch. Valerie laughed, really laughed, for the first time in her life. You already shared my bed once, remember? Smiled. Yes, but I was trying to be a gentleman. She stepped close and looked him in the eye. You stayed through the worst of me. Don't walk away now that I have peace. He didn't. That night, as they lay side by side under a soft blanket, Jacob whispered, You're not the girl they feared anymore. Valerie turned her face toward him. I was never that girl. They just never looked close enough to see the truth. And what's the truth? He asked. That I wasn't waiting to be rescued, she said softly. I was waiting to be understood. Jacob reached over and took her hand in his. Then let's spend the rest of our lives understanding each other. She closed her eyes with a gentle smile. No alarms, no snow, no locked doors, just a warm room, a steady hand, and a future waiting to be lived. And for the first time, Valerie didn't dream of escape. She dreamed of tomorrow.